Hey guys, I'm back. I didn't go AWOL. I appreciate all the messages checking in to see where I was at. I took a little bit of time off. As all you guys know, the work-life balance is hard sometimes. Being a present boss, giving customers consistent quality while fumbling through and learning how to run a business and still being a good husband and father is really rough sometimes. And sometimes you have to back burner stuff that you really love to do, like this podcast. And with that being said, if you guys caught my quick little intro asking that I want to hear from you guys, I want to clarify something. I've been pretty selective about who I choose to have on here for reasons. I want to have people who are relatable and who have been there and in the trenches. I want to talk to people who have something to teach or something to learn. I started this podcast because I wanted to meet and learn from other people in the industry. I regularly get emails from you guys, and I'm honored that you even care about my opinion. I'm positive there are way more qualified people out there to help me answer these most asked questions. So instead of doing the same format as I always do, I kind of want to table a few questions and have a mini series with short episodes for the next couple months to answer some of those questions that everybody has been asking. So yes, I do want to hear from you guys. I'm going to put a list of questions out on our Instagram page, such as what did you learn the hard way? What was your biggest pain point? What do you wish you knew before you started? And things like that. If you've got answers to some of these questions, I want to hear from you. We can make these short, we can make these 15 minutes, we can make these 30 minutes, we can make these an hour if you want. It's up to you guys and what you feel you can add value to. So, by the time you hear this, I want to have these questions posted. If you want to hop on a call with me, give me an email, kevin@jmwfabrication.com. We'll set up a time and we'll see what we can do. I want to start putting these out as they come. So we're going to get back into things pretty quick. So if you've got something, reach out to me, kevin@jmwfabrication.com. And until next time, get out there, get it done, and get it invoiced. Hey guys, welcome to the Welding Business Owners Podcast, where our podcast is late, but our bids are on time. I'm your host, Kevin, with JMW Fabrication. Today, we've got episode number 3 with Dillon from Yeti Welding and Fabrication. Him and his team work out of Spanish Fork, Utah, and they make some really cool stuff out there. If you don't follow him on Instagram yet, get on over there, find him at Yeti_Welding. You can find us at the podcast at Welding Business Owners Podcast. You can find me and my team at JMW Fabrication. Well, that's it for the housekeeping. I hope you guys enjoy episode number 3.
We haven't had a hard time finding individuals working for us, especially because we've been so loud on social media. I show a lot of my personal life on social media. I show what we do on a daily basis. I don't just take pictures of the finished product. I give videos. All of my guys, they all have signed media releases that I can use their presence here at the shop for media purposes online for marketing. And it's made a huge, tremendous impact on the way that we hire. And I'm not against hiring older individuals, but it seems like the individuals that we hire are on social media and they're younger individuals and they're eager to get in the trade. And I think, it's important. I have a lot of older individuals that come and work for us too, but I think that's the future. If you're not on social media of some sort, hiring can continue to be harder.
Yeah.
In anything. And that's how I met Kevin. I stole your idea on how to pull stainless steel cable.
Oh yeah. I did put that up there, didn't I? Yeah, exactly. Like you how many balconies did you guys have to do for that?
255.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 4
That's
pallets
awesome.
of stainless steel wire. It was like 20, it was just shy of 3,000 linear feet or something like that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But it was through social media that I learned, how to pull wire effectively. And then I took your 1 spool and turned it into 12 spools, and we pulled 12 spools at a time instead of 1 or 2.
Yeah. Just cut them all, cut off wheel right through there, pull them through, and yeah.
And let her eat.
Just like any other business owner or somebody who works a lot, the work life family balance is always tough. It's never really a balance, but how do you keep a happy wife and happy kids and still keep a successful business running?
As a small business, it's hard to maintain work-life balance. But I think it's also important, and this has been a hard lesson for me, is making sure that I prioritize their time with mine. Making sure that like I understand what's important. Can I be there all the time? No. Do I wish that I could be there all the time with my family? Yes. But I know and understand that having dad at the side of the soccer game is super important on the sidelines, and so I made sure that on a day-to-day basis that my schedule is cleared, or at least I have an avenue to maintain getting to those important timed events. If that means me driving or taking an extra truck to a job site so that I have a quote unquote escape route, they call it, Dillon needs an escape route. I'll take an extra truck, or we'll take an extra car. And so that I know that even if the job, if it's outside of the shop, I can make sure that I can peel away and hit that important time with my family. And then just talking it through with my wife about when our busy seasons are, when we make the hay, when we make the money while the sun's shining. In the summer months, we know and understand that I'm going to generally be working more, and those are going to look like 10 to 12-hour days. In the wintertime, we know that I'm going to spend more time at the house because it's simply too cold or too dark to work effectively and efficiently, or we just don't have enough work, and I'll spend a couple of days at home without being there. So, I think effective communication of understanding what's happening in the business. And I try not to take too much baggage home when I go home and just talk about work, business. I make sure that I try my best to keep a balance of it and keep my wife tuned in on what's happening, a little bit about what cash flow looks like and a little bit about what's happening with the culture of the employees, times that we're working, projects that we're on. But I don't go down into detail and tell her like this handrail was supposed to be 38 inches tall and he made it 42 inches tall. And now we got to cut it down. We got to do this. We got to do that. I try not to burden my wife with that, but try to keep her informed with what I'm doing and let her know, what schedules looks like, and spend the quality time there versus just talking. Because, man, recently the CEO of Navita came out and he was on an interview and they're like, how do you balance? And he said, when I wake up, I'm working. When I'm at work, I'm working. When I'm at home, I'm working. When I'm sleeping, I'm thinking about work, and I'm always working. And I think any small business owner can feel the same, that we're always working. But it's important to just make sure that you set expectations about people's time that's important and make time for that. There was literally a time where I flew out to an area and I knew that I had a soccer game, and I flew home. I flew out, had a job meeting, flew home that same day, went to the soccer game, and then that next morning, before anybody even woke up, I flew back out to that same job site. I flew across the country twice just to make sure that I was home. And I didn't say anything about it to anybody or like post about it, like this is what I'm doing so that I can do this. But it was that important to make sure that I was there at the soccer game, because I had a promise to myself that I wouldn't miss any soccer or t-ball games. And I think I was pretty effective at hitting that.
That's pretty incredible.
And that's what you have to go through and do, right? You have to do all kinds of stuff like that.
There's a season for everything. And, I think I've shared earlier, and, people are listening consecutively to the podcast. My shop is almost an hour away from my house, and I commute every day. And Wednesdays, I would actually work at home because I eliminate that almost 2 hours of driving, and I'm more productive when nobody's around. And so I would take the second half of the day. And so my kids are homeschooled, and I would be able to spend the time with them and garden and do all this other stuff, build stuff. But it came to the point where it was like, that's not sustainable. Like, it's hard enough to work 4 10-hour days and run your business and everybody else in 4 10-hour days when the entire trade industry runs on 5 days a week. But to have me dip out on a Wednesday, like that was really tough. And my wife is awesome and she totally understood. She's like, look, go do what you got to do. Like, stuff started to like not fall apart, but it was just like, it wasn't good. And she's like, go work. I understand this is summertime. It's your busy season. She's like, I don't want you to go, work like you used to work, but like, let's revisit this let's catch up on some things. Let's revisit this in a couple weeks and see what it looks like. And then we'll kind of go from there. And, it's not off the table. I might have to modify it to be like, that's how I do my Fridays instead of a Wednesday, because I would still work Fridays because usually nobody's here in the shop doing anything. So I could get like the maintenance done and I could clean things and I could, stock the trucks and things like that. And you and I are just way more efficient when we don't have anybody else around. So,
right. Yeah.
But there is a time and, you kind of just have to go with the flow and readjust. And that's why I say it's never a balance. It's always it's a work in progress, and you have to just keep modifying to what suits your family the best.
Yeah, no, exactly. Everybody's lifestyles are different, right? I've had employees that go off on their own and do their own thing, but they're not married, or they're just kind of lone ranger in it, and they can work 7/15s if they want. They love it, but it's all about the lifestyle and the choices that you're gonna be working and living towards that make it important. So I don't think there's a great answer for everybody, but you have to understand what's important to you and make time for those things that are important in any way.
Looking down the road, what do you think, like, what are your goals for the next, like personal and professional? Like, what are your goals for the next 1, 5, 10 years?
10-year goals to be done with the Yeti Welding.
What does that mean?
I would like to be at a point in 10 years where the company is either self-sustaining itself and I am not here on a day-to-day basis or even a week-to-week basis, but I can come and check in and more of a financier of somebody who stepped in to purchase the business. And I'm retiring, quote unquote, from the welding industry and moving on to something a little bit different. Maybe start that eyeball cabinetry like I talked about, maybe start something different. But in 10 years, I would like to have enough financial freedom and stability from Yeti Welding and its entities to be able to step away and be retired from running this portion of my business.
How old are you, by the way?
I'm 31, so that'll put me at 41. Okay. And the reason why I only pinged that, I know that that's an early age. The reason why I pinged that is I'm thinking about where my family is, where my children will be at that point. And at that point, my oldest son will be 18, turning 19, at a point where he could potentially be here working in the business and have opportunity to say, Dad, I want this. And if one of my children or my kin in the next 10 years says that they want Yeti Welding and they want me to stick around, I'd stick around and keep the business for them to let them start integrating themselves. I mean, that's always what it is, right? You want generational legacy, but I don't care if my boys, if they say that they don't want to weld, I'm not going to be hurt, right? Year 10, that'll put me at 41, and I'll put my boys at 19, 17, and 14. So it puts me at a really good age to really spend some quality time with them where we're either going to college and we've got some sports going on. And so I want to be able to spend really quality time during those years, because immediately after they turn 18, they leave the house and I've got to turn a new leaf completely in my life because I'm not caring for individuals all of the time, right? And so I'm just kind of trying to forward think for that. Some goals for our short-term future. In the next 1 year, we want to be in 20,000 plus square feet, which is huge for us. because we're going
That's a big jump.
1,600 square feet to 20,000. I don't think it's unachievable. It is a big jump, but we've saved a lot of money on rent for what we've paid here and what we've done out of our shop. And we can perform like a shop in 20,000 square feet, you know? So I'm not really like, it's a goal because it's going to make our jobs a lot easier instead of having to clean up the shop and reset the shop every single day for a different job every single day. We can kind of have designated areas. Like we've got a railing job area. We've got a structural place area. Versus right now, it's like we got to execute a project from start to finish and get that stuff out of the shop so we can reset the shop and do something different because our envelope just isn't bigger. So 1 year, you know, our 1 year goal is to be in at least 20,000 square feet or more. Our continued goal every year is to continue to double the gross sales every single year back to back. You know, I'm not one of those guys that's going to tell you, I'm just going to 10x my revenue in 1 year or 2x or 10x or whatever. I think we just double and see how it compounds. We've been successful over the last 4 years of doubling. So this year has been tough to try to get on track with a double because the more compounding it gets, the bigger the balloon is, the bigger the ball gets. But it's been a fun goal to chase, and it helps us readjust our trajectory. You know, if we want to double every year, we can't just continue to weld a handrail for Janice every day and her neighbors. We're not going to be able to find enough handrails to weld like that. So it kind of changed our mentality of what jobs should we look for as we're chasing that goal of doubling our gross revenue from year to year. We're almost at our double point for the year from what we did last year, which is super cool. So if we hit double in the next 1 to 2 months, then we'll hit our goal, and then, you know, then next year just gets bigger. But I think those are probably our couple of short-term goals. This is a really short-term goal. This one's like a 3 to 4 month schedule. It's handing off half of what I do on a daily basis to somebody else. And that's particularly in the financial realms. I would much rather just do the sales of my company, do the sales and make sure that my employees are taken care of by buying them new tools and new fancy stuff. I would like to replace myself when it comes to finalizing pricing, finalizing job estimates, finalizing invoices, taking myself out of the financial sector. I talked about that earlier in the podcast so I would like to replace myself and double myself to where I can spend a little bit more time working in the business or on the business versus in the business. And I think we've got some really great candidates, part of my team, who one of those individuals will be taking over shortly. Other than that, I don't have a lot of other goals. You know, I've got materialistic goals of like machines that I want to buy, but time frames of when I'll buy them, I don't know. You know, I'd really love to have a tube laser, a fiber tube laser. Love to have a BLM LT8. I'd really love to have one of those machines, but at a $2 million ticket item at 1,600 square feet, I can't really fit one in my shop.
It would take up your entire shop.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Probably more.
I don't think we haven't thought about putting it in a shipping container. We're like, we'll just put it in a shipping container. You know? I was this close to buying a EMI EL squared, which is similar to like a Bentech Dragon A400 machine.
Yeah.
Like this close to buying one of those and putting it in a shipping container, but we missed the bid on a project that it would have paid for itself. So we ended up not buying that. But I would love to have a BLM LT8 tube laser. That's a goal of ours. And we want to have a 12K, at least, a flat plate laser and a CNC bender within the next 5 years. So I think those things would really speed productions up for a miscellaneous shop like mine.
Yeah.
Other than that, you know, no like crazy goals. It's funny because I've got another podcast that I'll be on who asked me about the same thing. Like, what are your goals? And I'm like, you know what? I need to set some better goals, I think. You know, because I think goals give us direction to work off of.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I wanted a Denali Duramax. That's all I wanted. And I mentioned that earlier in the podcast. And as soon as I set that goal, like, bing, I figured out how to make the money a lot easier than just looking at how cool they were when they drove by. Once it was a goal, it was way easier to get. So I think, I appreciate your correction. I'm not that down to actually get better goals, to put better goals on.
Well, if you ever go check out EMI for their tubing cutters, they're only about an hour away from us. So you should definitely swing on by.
Oh, really? We
Yeah.
we got a chance to really do a deep delve into them at FabTech last year.
Mm-hmm.
They were in a really weird spot at FabTech last year. They were in the tubing.
Yeah, they were in the
bending.
painting side. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like way in the back. So like we were at the Vortman booth with JPS International. Shout out to they've built everything that EMI has done. The EL Square, the ACPC. I really think that the ACPC is great. When I saw it, I showed him my SketchUp video of what I call the Big Yeti. And it was exactly like the ACPC that I was going to design and draw and build for ourselves. That's inevitably what my old SCV table is going to end up being in the next couple of months, is our own homemade version of their ACPC.
Have you looked at the JD squared, the XR12, or I think it is?
XR12. Yeah, I looked at the XR12, and I think it's a great unit. I think it's really industrial. I think it's well thought out, and all of the products from JD squared are hands down quality, amazing products. I just really am not a huge fan of the way that its cutter head slides on the gantry with the parts. I've always been a big fan of it being stationary, similar to the EMI and the Bentech, where the head stays stationary and then it's fed through and it's dropped. So I think the XR12 is great. I just am not in love with it 100% quite yet.
Why would you choose the EMI over the Bentech Dragon?
I really like the way that the EMI is built because it's a fully welded assembly. It's not a bolt together assembly. The Dragon has its bolted and it's kind of just folded. It's made out of bent plate and stuff. The EMI is a solid, rigid frame. It can be unloaded from a truck and set down, and within an hour or less, you're up and running. Boom. And not that 1 hour is super important when making a large purchase like that, but it goes to just show me that the manufacturer was forward thinking about how can we make this machine last a long time. I really like that. And if you pay attention to the way that the EMI is built, it doesn't have any specific bearing rollers on its long linear rails. It actually runs off of V-groove rollers that just sit on the tube or around the tube to hold it. So for my thought, like, you always see these machines when you go to FabTech, all the machines are brand new. But I'm always like, and again, remember, Kevin, we're on the farm here. We're in a farm shop.
Yep.
What is they going to look like when those machines are dirty? When those machines are run hard in a fab shop with bad ventilation and poor maintenance and cleaning, which a lot of fab shops inevitably end up having, because that's the nature. Our nature of our business is dirty and, just dust. Welding things. And, and I know how much we maintain the linear rails on our plasma cutter. How many times are we going to maintain that same thing on something that's linear going that long, 20 feet plus? And the EMI, where it's just the V-groove rollers rolling on a hard piece of tubing, it's, to me, less likely of having any problems than the Bentech. Although, I think Bentech software, they've got Bentech software, obviously, which has been awesome and rad, but it integrates really well with the EMI as far as what we could understand about its software. The circuitry board on the EMI, I think, is far superior than Bentech. When you go and look at the EMI's cabinet for where they house all of their chips, their processings, their wiring, their connection, it's a big board. It's just this big, giant board and cabinet you can open up, and it's all right there, really easy to use interface, whereas the Dragon's just compact into this small box that's a little bit more proprietary versus like, hey, I've got to fix this, and a guy can't come out and just fix it. On the phone, they can say, look up in this kind of grid pattern area. So there's some few things that I liked about the EMI versus the Dragon. I don't think that one is particularly better, one versus the other, because when it comes down to it, they're all going to run hypotherm plasma cutters, and whatever plasma cut and air quality is coming out, that's about the cut quality you're going to get, the motion controls and things. But, you know, and dollar for dollar, they're pretty comparative in pricing. But, you know,
were they really?
They're dollar for dollar on the envelope size, and I gotta put it for that, because the Bentec you can get shorter ones, right, and you can get different things. EMI's like they're like in and out, you know, they're like you get this many choices. This is what we build, versus having the adaptability for different things like water or no water or this long or that long. EMIs are like, we make them in this model, and we make them in this size. Pick which one you want. And so, you know, if you're looking at this model for the EMI and it's like this size, and you compare it apples to apples to the Bentec of that one, I think the delta is less than 10% or around 10%, one cost versus the other.
We actually did a pretty deep dive on that when we were out there too. And I think the one that we were looking at, the EMI was like 120, and Bentec Dragon 400 was like 75. That's why I asked you why you chose that, because you can do a lot of maintenance for $50,000.
Oh yeah.
Who is that? Gary Ramsey. He's got a tubing laser for 90. You know what I mean? Like, well, okay, yeah, it's straight from China. And what's that support going to look like? And, you know, and you're kind of putting your eggs in Gary Ramsey's basket versus like a whole company that's got tech support. I don't know. Maybe we might buy, you know, a $90,000 tubing laser and just forgo the plasma and just go straight to laser, you know?
Yeah. And for us, I had that same thought, Kevin, because like, I think the idea of a tubular cutter for that is awesome. But unless you're doing a lot of industrial handrail and industrial stuff, I think you really definitely want a laser versus a plasma. You know, I wouldn't want to build a custom home hand railing with a Dragon and do it over and over and over and over and over. I'd rather, if I have the ability for the delta that you mentioned, the $90,000 versus 120 or 75, I think I'd probably rather have a tube laser lasering that stuff out. And that's why I inevitably didn't buy it. We had a stairwell project in Denver. It was going to be 4 stairwells, 12 flights each. So it was going to be plenty of railing to do. You know, it was like an $800,000 contract or something. And it was like, it made sense to buy one of these because it was all round tube pipe stuff. And at that point, and it's in emergency stairwell sections where, you know, you're getting production quality hand railing done and not top tier custom home kind of stuff. And so I was on the fence like, all right, well, it would make sense to get one of these machines. But then when it really boiled down to it, we ended up not getting the contract. They went with the lowball bidder, so I'll probably be there next week. That's the story of my life.
Yeah, right. You know, it is what it is. We are making our plasma table work for some of our handrails because, you know, like everybody loves the horizontal line rail now, either 1/2 inch square or 1/2 inch round pickets. And, you know, in the past probably year and a half, we've been really drawing everything in CAD, and we get away from, you know, laying it out and trying to do math. Like Dillon's gotten pretty good at Shaper 3D. He'll take a DXF file, and we've got jigs set up, and it's not as efficient as a laser or a plasma tubing profile. It's just not. But if you make a flat DXF and you can label the parts accordingly, you could just set up a jig, set up some stops, and then just plasma out the square, or they actually end up being rectangle if you're doing a stair rail, holes or round holes or oval holes, slotted holes, what do you say? We're doing all that on our plasma table now. And when I first got our plasma table, you know, kind of to allude what you were saying, how you're going to take your old plasma table and make it into a railing, whatever. At FabTech, did you see the lightning rail tables?
I didn't see the lightning rail.
So lightning rail tables, it's basically a plasma table without a plasma head. It has an ink head on it. and it's a 1-inch plate. And you can get them 20 feet long, you can get them 40 feet long. And the theory is you take your file and it'll draw out your railing in this red ink on the table, and then you can build your rail on this table, which is kind of cool. But what they do is a lot of rail shops, they'll take sheets of like 16 gauge or 18 gauge, and they'll have it draw it on the 16 or 18 gauge, and then take that to the fab table and then build it on top of that. And that sounded really awesome to me until I found out that these tables were $250,000. I was like, what?
Whoa.
I'm like, why can't you just do this with a plasma table and then index them? So you take a 5x10 and then you just index them together on your rail table, and you can do the same thing, and it doesn't have to be 40 feet long or 20 feet long, you know?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what you were alluding to about converting your table to something like that. Is that what you were looking to do, or?
Similar. So if you know the EMI, they have one of their machines called the ACPC, and it does 3 sides of a profile. It doesn't go all the way around, and its mainly design was for angle iron and channel profiles. Right? We do a lot of stairs, repetitious, over and over and over and over and over. And so what we were going to do is we're going to call it the Big Yeti. And we're going to take our table, because we have 2 tables now. We have 2 STV plasma tables. And our old plasma table, we're going to take off the rails off of the both sides, and we're going to make it a mono rail. So it'll only have one rail. It'll be about 25 feet long. And then we'll have a mono gantry where it's just got one side of the gantry out. And you'll be able to load a channel on and load the DXF just like you're talking about. And it's going to be able to burn out the holes in the channel. It's only going to be flat pattern, but it'll be able to go up and down the 20 linear feet, be able to be loaded like sawhorses, and it will be able to burn out all of the holes and just give the top profile of how the channel needs to be cut. Then you'll have another handheld plasma cutter underneath the table that you'll just grab and cut the flanges of the C channel. And then that channel is done. And we're going to call it the Big Yeti. So it's mainly designed just for us to do stair stringer stuff. But also if we wanted to do larger, if you wanted to do an I-beam, a poor man's beam line is what we're calling it on the side. That's what Lex calls it. He's like, that's a poor man's beam line. And I was like, come on, Lex, it's better than that. But you're right. So then if you needed to drill the holes in the top of an I-beam, you just set it on there, and it would be able to do all of your holes. Same thing. It's just going to be very rudimentary and basic. And I've got it all drawn up and things that we needed to do. But I didn't want to go out and buy all of the stuff to build just this thing. But I knew that our table was getting towards the end of its life for what we needed. I knew we were going to be purchasing a new table. So now that we've purchased a new table, our secondary table is going to be turned and retrofitted with all of its motion controllers, stepper motors, and rails. We're going to use those components to transfer over onto the Yeti. And there was nothing wrong with our table. It was just getting a little bit slow and sluggish. And then when STV rolled out with their servo motors and stuff on that, I was all in. And I needed the larger cutting envelope. We needed the 6-foot by 12-foot section.
Yeah. I think it's like the 40-foot table is $250,000. That's why I was so blown away by it. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you must have some sort of patent on this, because $125,000 for the 20-foot one and $250,000 for the 40-foot one. And I was like, you're out of your minds.
After spending a lot of time designing, building, working with this CNC stuff, to do a simplistic thing, I think the hardest thing is figuring out the ink delivery on this. But my friends out in Pujan, Pakistan, they could definitely help me understand how to get that ink on there effectively. motion controller. See, they're just running an HR40 bread loaf rail on this. They're literally running a rail that you can get off of Amazon.
So I actually talked with Bob from JD Squared about this. FabTech 2019. I talked to him about this. He had no idea. I was like, so what do you think about that lightning rail? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I went down to the aisle they were in. I got the brochure. The brochure is actually pretty cool. It's a little thing that you open up. It has a video inside. Like it's like a legit video screen. I guess there's the promo stuff that you can do when you charge $250,000 for something that costs you like 10. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So I brought it to Bob and at JD Square, and he's like, "Oh wow!" He's like, "This is a really good idea." So after fact, we spitball back and forth about it. He looked into the inkhead delivery system and things like that. If you've ever met Bob, he's the coolest older dude that you've ever met. He is so smart and he's so well versed in the fabrication industry and getting into the whole computer side of things. He's just a really, really interesting individual. And he likes to build things that are like they're overbuilt, they work really well, and they're just not overpriced. And he's like just buying Sharpies and then drawing it with Sharpies. He's like, instead of drawing the entire line like this ink system does for every single picket, all you got to do is draw like an inch or two of each corner. He's like, if you lay it in between the corners, you can figure out how it's going to go. Your pieces are straight anyway. So just draw the corners with the Sharpie, have it draw it out, and just change the Sharpie out every sheet. He's like, Sharpies are like $3. He's like, it's not even worth buying the ink for this thing to just change out the Sharpie and make it happen. It's something that, we talked about implementing, but we never kind of got around to it. And I mean, it's always been an idea that in my mind that I would love to make happen, but I don't draw well enough in order to make that happen. I'm pulled in so many other directions. I'm like, I'll get there, or I'll just buy something one day,
Yeah.
Well, that's it for episode number 3 with Dillon from Yeti Welding and Fab. If you're not following him yet or his team, go find them on Instagram at Yeti_welding. You can find us, same place as always, Welding Business Owners Podcast. You can find me at JMW Fabrication with me and my team. Until next time, get out there, get it done, and get it invoiced.